And before we get started in the show, we have some important information that we wanted to share with you guys. We wanted to promote some things that are coming up in November that we're going to be teaching live and virtually.
Right. Live on camera. We're going to be live on camera.
So we have two things coming up. You want to hit the first?
Yeah. So the first one is going to be through Balanced Body. And it will be a 2-hour segment on Friday, November 8th from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time, which would be 11 to 1
to 1, yeah,
Eastern time.
Eastern Standard Time.
And the topic is enhancing your personal training with Pilates. So Brian and I are going to take some functional movement patterns that are useful for anybody and basically look at how personal training and Pilates work to develop those skills in your clients. Should be really fun. We tend to do a good job. We tend to have a lot of stuff to say and some good advice for y'all. Some good exercises to actually see us on video live and doing that. So that'll be super fun. You can find that at Pilates.com. I think Brian's going to put a link in the show notes. So he'll put a link down there so you can find that there, or with Pilates.com, you look up there, I think, events, and it'll show up there as well.
Also, for this, as well as for the second thing that we're going to do November 17th with Level Up Movement, we're going to be Don't Risk Those Discs, all about sciatica. We're going to be talking about sciatic pain and what you can do about it, what it is, how to deal with it, all of that kind of stuff. So we're really going to do a deep dive into sciatic pain, and that's November 17th, 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. That's Pacific Standard Time. So my time, Eastern Standard Time, is to be noon to 1:30. So, and again, we're going to be live. We're going to be teaching together. It should be a lot of fun.
So come on and join us.
And keep an eye out on our social media because we will have the links on there. We'll also have the links in the show notes. So you can do a quick, easy click on it. And there it'll be the Level Up Movement one. The doors open on the 27th of October. So you won't be able to register until the 27th. But keep an eye on our social media. We're going to be posting all about it. And now on to the show. Welcome to Moving Conversations, a podcast for movement professionals by movement professionals. If you coach, train, or teach movement, Pilates, or fitness, then this podcast is for you. With more than 60 years of experience in fitness and Pilates, your hosts, Brian Ritchie and Nora St. John, explore the science of human movement, diving deep into the facts, myths, and common misconceptions, hoping to spark thought and conversation about how we view fitness and movement. Now, let's jump into Moving Conversations. And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Good morning, Nora. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Brian. I just got back from a Pilates on tour in Atlanta, and it was super exciting. Lots of fun things going. I did 3 different advancement principles courses, and they were all sold out.
Nice.
So it's good. It's like I think what we're doing here in terms of movement and how it deals with injuries and issues is really a hot topic, and so I'm very excited to be there.
Awesome. It's interesting you mentioned that because I was thinking about that. You and I sort of have always shared that lane, and that lane for so many years has been scarcely traveled. There haven't been a whole lot of people. People have always been interested in it.
Yes.
But there haven't been a lot of instructors. There haven't been a whole lot of people doing what we do. And we've got 30 years plus experience, each of us. And it's interesting that now I'm seeing more people sort of diving into it, even as instructors or as students. And it's always interesting to see what their point of view is, where they're coming from. And, like we've talked about before, there's a lot of influencers who think they know what, they're talking about. And, they've only been out of school if they've even gone to school, but, they're still, baby trainers in a lot of regards. And it's always interesting that there's more people sort of taking up that mantle in the lane that we have been, driving in for many, many, many years.
It was really interesting to have very in-depth conversations with a lot of teachers. Like I was interested, like things have changed. Again, I've been teaching teachers for, I don't know, a long time now, 20 years now. And just to see the depth of the questions, the understanding of movement, I was really impressed. It was very exciting to just see how this profession has grown to the point where there's just a level of sophistication that I had not seen so consistently before, and an interest in those very fine levels of detail and those subtleties. It's really cool. I was really excited. I was inspired.
Awesome. Awesome. I've noticed the same thing over probably the last, I don't know, 5 years or so.
Yeah, I
It
feel like
seems like
almost since COVID.
yeah, everyone's up
I'm
their
not sure.
game.
Yeah, everybody's up their game. Exactly.
And it's great. It's
Exactly.
wonderful to see, when I speak in front of some groups, you never know to what level you're teaching to,
Yeah.
because sometimes you're teaching to people who have never really worked with a whole lot of people and they've been in the industry only a year or so. Other times I'm teaching to people who've been in the industry for 15, 20 years. And I'm
Yeah.
finding that there's more of those people now who have really
Yes.
devoted their lives and their careers and their career path into what we do, into
Mhm.
movement, and really
Yep.
studying human movement and studying
Yep.
proper human movement. And I find that's so inspiring and wonderful.
Yeah, it's super cool. So you guys out there who are doing that, kudos to you, because
Yes.
really this world has grown tremendously. It's matured beautifully, and I
Mhm.
just was so thrilled to see the skill level that is really developing out there, and honestly, the insights. It's like as practitioners, we are often far ahead of the research curves, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's just research really does follow experience, and just to see the insights and the innovations that are coming out of people's experiences was just fantastic. Loved it. Very
That's
exciting.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, today we are going to be building on to what we've spent a few weeks on. Now, we took a couple weeks off. We took 3 weeks off. I was traveling. You were traveling. I actually moved from one facility into a brand new one. I have a new studio that was, oh my gosh, talk about stress and whatnot. We're in, everything's in pretty much. It's awesome. But now things have calmed down, so we're back on our regularly scheduled, times that we can meet on a weekly or biweekly basis, which is wonderful. Uh, so we're talking about the shoulder still. We have one
We
more
are.
session
We
on the
are.
shoulder, and now we're going to get into trying to take the theoretical and make it practical.
So we wanted to do this. Now, actually, before we start, I just have to say, like, if any of you have moved a studio, any of you Pilates teachers or personal trainers out there, we're not moving like folding tables. Okay. So
No.
just have a little sympathy for Brian moving giant pieces of equipment up and down stairs, elevators, loading docks, the whole deal. Anyway, much
Oh
sympathy,
my
Brian.
gosh. I mean, I told you 3.5 hours to get one treadmill in just the doors. That
It's,
was, oh my gosh. That
it's the
was
nature of the critter.
another story. One of these days we'll tell these stories. They're very entertaining, frustrating at the time, you know. Misery plus time equals humor. So, I'm waiting for the humor portion to come up and it should be fairly soon. Uh, before
I
we get
love
into
it.
today's topic, though, let's remind you, please do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe or the follow button. If you hit the follow every Tuesday morning, it's going to be in your feed. It'll download automatically so you can listen to it on your way to work, when you're working out, however you choose to listen to us. You can always reach us at movingcombos@gmail.com. Any questions, comments, topics you'd like us to cover, check us out on Instagram. We've got a lot of exercises over there right now. Every week we're posting something, a little bit different with our Anatomy Minis as well as with our Moving Conversations video versions where we show exercises. So check that out, Moving Convos on Instagram and Moving Conversations on Facebook. All right, so let us jump into the shoulder. Let's take it into the functional. Let's try and figure out, okay, we talked about all the theoretical. Let's turn it into functional and practical. And what I thought we should do, because again, some people are watching it through our YouTube channel, through my Brian Ritchie, the YouTube channel. You can see us, live and in person. Hello, I'm waving. But for those of you not, who are just listening to us, it's kind of hard for us to demonstrate exercises. So I thought we'd talk about strategies. What are the strategies that we really want to focus on when it comes to training the shoulder unit?
When I was first at St. Francis, I spent a lot of time working on the shoulder and was very confused by how to approach it because it is a multi-planar, many different joints are all working at the same time, and trying to
Yeah.
create coordination and harmony between them was not clear to me. So working with the doctors there, working with the PTs there, working just over the years, I came up with just a very simple strategy in my head, which we will elaborate on wildly. But one of the first things I always start with is that glenohumeral congruency concept we talked about a couple of sessions ago, is how is that humerus moving in the glenoid fossa? Because if that isn't moving well, right, if that is out of whack, or that's hypermobile, or that's going too forward or too back in the joint, every single thing I do with my arms is going to influence that joint, probably not for the better. So starting with that, that's piece one for me was always, or that was one part of piece one. Piece two, or piece 1A, 1B maybe, is where are your scapula and what are they doing? And we talked a little bit about that too. So are they stable? Are they mobile? Are they moving in the same planes at the same time? Are they in the best position on your rib cage? Are they both in the best position on your rib cage? And then how do I train that? How do I work with that? Then looking at just arm movement, right? Basic arm movement. So thinking about, I generally start, especially in a rehab progression, I start moving below 90 degrees. So, just small flexion, extension, horizontal abduction, adduction, but just, small ranges of motion kind of below shoulder height, because that usually decreases tension on the neck and shoulders. And then my final phase is actually doing overhead work, whether it's pushing up or pulling down, anything where I'm really lifting the arms up overhead. So that's kind of my overview. Glenohumeral congruency, scapular awareness, which is a big topic all by itself.
Yes.
Moving the arms kind of below 90-ish, and then moving up into moving the arms over shoulder height.
I like
as a
it.
rough
I like
guideline.
it. Yeah. For me, it comes down to a lot of balance, because I always want to balance the anterior shoulder girdle with the posterior shoulder girdle. I want to make sure that all the muscles that attach to the scapula are working properly, that they are balanced and supporting one another. How I've described it is, imagine your scapula as a clock, and pretty much at all the numbers you see on the clock face, there's a muscle pulling in that direction. And if one side is pulling more than the other, or not pulling, that scapula is not going to be working properly and not going to be able to do its job properly. So I'm always looking at balancing that out to make sure that it's working properly and moving properly in good timing as well, in good rhythm. So a lot of that comes into that. And I think they go hand in hand with what you were just talking about. So let's start off with glenohumeral congruency. Okay. We're going to start off with that and talk about how do we want to increase that? What are we looking for? And give us like one or two things that you would focus on to help create or enhance that congruency.
So for me, a lot of it is creating awareness in the client. And so using tips and tricks, because basically my experience of most clients is they have absolutely no idea what their shoulder's doing at all, period. And it takes a while for them to figure out, like, well, what do you mean? Like, what am I? I have no idea what it's doing. I don't know what you're seeing. I don't know. So a lot of it is trying to really help them understand what they're going for. So for example, in humeral congruency, right? It's like, that's our humeral head trying to stay relatively centered in the glenoid fossa as we, for example, medially laterally rotate, right? As a very simple example. So with the arms down at your sides, right? I'm just rolling my shoulders forward. So I'm internally rotating, immediately rotating, and laterally rotating. Now, two things about that. First is I'm trying not to move the scapula, right? Because I can roll the scapula forward and back. Nope, this is trying just to move the shoulder. So that's the first thing. And then as clients gain awareness and as I kind of train them, I'll have them put, let's say, one hand gently over the top of the humeral head. So, taking my left hand and putting it right over my right shoulder, and I'm rotating very slowly at first. And I'm noticing that humeral head is staying pretty centered. In other words, it's not banging forward into my hand or banging back into my fingers, right? It's like, it's just staying pretty centered. So when clients can start to feel, oh, that's what you mean, they can just do that exercise, hand on top of the shoulder gently, and then just very lightly rolling the shoulders back, or rolling the humeral head back and forth, medial lateral rotation, to see if they can find that place where it doesn't roll forward and back. One of the little piece of that is a lot of times for clients, typically the humeral head will roll forward. And what I find helps to
Yep.
control that is the external rotators, the lateral rotators of the shoulders, right? Infraspinatus, arterius minor. So I'll have them externally rotate first, which generally brings that humeral head back, and
Hmm.
then try to keep that engagement as they roll that humeral head into medial rotation. So hopefully that all made sense from a verbal perspective. And what I find is if a client really does have a humeral head that rolls forward, they'll get fatigued like crazy in those
Yeah.
external rotators in like 5 reps. They're just going to be burning back there. And that
Yep.
lets me know that those are not working well, right? Those are not strong enough or have enough endurance to really hold that humeral head back. And that's what we're going
Yeah.
to try to build slowly and carefully.
I think awareness is a big key to anything because one thing that we always joke about is our clients don't know where their body is in space ever. They've been going through life in on autopilot, and unless something has
Yes.
pain, and pain has been the only thing that they've felt in that, and that's all they're focusing on. Otherwise, they never think about that joint. They just reach
Nope.
up for their cup in the morning off the
Yeah,
shelf.
very
They reach for
unconscious.
this. They're shifting gears in their car. They're opening a doorknob. They're very unconscious with their movements. They're not really thinking. And to put their awareness there is huge. And to really get to understand what flexion is, what extension is, what rotation is. And again, when you're looking at glenohumeral congruency, to make sure that they can feel what it feels like in the socket. For me, I like them to feel neutral. Where
Uh-huh.
is
Yeah.
neutral in the socket? Because
Yep.
it's one thing to do it with your arms straight down. Because when our arms are straight down, it's sort of just they just hang, and they're going to
Yes.
hang. Some hang anterior, some hang a little posterior, mostly anterior, but they're just hanging in general. But as soon as you ask them to do something, well, that's when some muscles that are overly tight or overly strong are going to pull it out of that natural, congruency. So when we
Yes.
do leave that down by your side and approach closer to 90 degrees, that's when things can become an issue. And a lot of times I like to begin to introduce where that neutral is, where it is in the socket, like you said, holding on to it, feeling where it is, but then also be able to maybe put them up against the wall so that they're leaning against the wall. And I mean, I'm talking about a light lean, not a big lean, a light
Are you
lean.
leaning on the side of your arm? You're leaning how
Nope,
are you leaning
forward, leaning against
forward?
it forward, like
So
you're gonna do a
hands
push-up,
out? Okay, like a
hands
like a
out.
wall push-up. Okay.
Right, like a wall push-up, wall plank. And then just feel where that humeral head wants to be in a little bit of
Mm,
protraction and retraction. So, kinda like we do with the low back, flatten your back all the way, then arch it, and then try and find where your neutral is in between. Well, a lot of times I'll either do this with the lying supine with, their arms straight out in front of them like a zombie, or leaning up against the wall like a wall push-up, and just have them sort of feel where that neutral is. Go
yep.
all the way forward, all the way back, find what feels comfortable and what feels neutral. And then can they hold that as they bring their arms down? Can they hold that
Mm,
as they bring their
interesting.
arm back up? When they bring their
Uh-huh.
arm out, into scaption, 45 degrees, not directly out to the side, begin to feel that arm in motion. And if they're lying supine on a foam roller or a half foam roller or whatever, just something to elevate so their scapula is not pinched back, can they do protraction and retraction? And then can they take their arms overhead and feel that natural movement? Can they bring their hands down by their side without having their shoulder want to pop forward? And again, it's all about just movement or even a abduction to the side. Just getting them to move under zero resistance, letting gravity either help, with pulling back or a little bit of resistance as it's coming back up the weight of the arms, but just introducing where that humeral head is in the joint and how is it moving properly? How is it supposed to move properly? So a lot of it's reintroduction of the joint.
Yes. And awareness of the joint.
Yeah.
Yeah, one other place that I play with that is, with the back against a wall or
Hmm.
a chair or something, so you could kind of feel where your and this is a little bit more the scapula, but has something to do with
Right.
the glenohumeral congruency as well, right? So they've got a feeling for that, and a lot of times I use just a band around the back of the ribs and in both hands,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
Something like that. So I'm feeling my scapula or my upper back against the wall, whatever that is, and I'm reaching forward without letting the scapula move away from the wall. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason, and that's a little bit more about scapular mobility or stability in that case. But it's also when clients do that, they tend to keep that glenohumeral joint in place,
Yeah.
right? Whereas what I find, and this is what when I'm watching people on the reformer, for those of you Pilates teachers, they have the straps in their hands, they reach their arms forward like they're doing serve tray. And basically what I see is the scapula will protract from that. And
Yeah.
basically I'll almost see that the humerus moves forward in the joint. I'll almost see like a
Yep.
little bit of a gap, right where the humerus meets the scapula. So if they really keep
Yep.
the scapula back on that, then they get that sense of how does that humeral head sit into the socket. If
Mm-hmm.
you studied yoga, that idea of like really, sucking that humeral head in is a cue used a lot in yoga. And that's one way that I have clients feel that is keep that scapula where they are
Yep.
and reach the arms forward. And then,
I
maybe
love
from
the
there, I open the arms out to the side. It's good
Yep.
feedback.
No, it absolutely. I like that. And I like the thought of sucking the humeral head back in, because I find that that is what, when I'm putting someone on a foam roller on the ground or a half foam roller and their arms are straight out in front of them, if they're holding a dowel, or what my favorite is to have them hold a band and
Mhm.
just pull lightly away,
Yeah.
half a pound of pressure, not much, just
Yep.
enough so that the rotator cuff, the muscles of the shoulder have just a tad of tension. And what I
Yep.
find that does is it sucks that humeral head into where it belongs.
Yep.
And then they can take their arms out to the side, overhead, one at a time. They can do sort of an X pattern, one arm up, one arm down, whatever it is you want to do with the band. But you can begin to do some movements, and that humeral head does suck into the fossa. And I'd never heard that term before, sucking in, but I love it. I think that that really sort of defines what we're asking it to do, is to hold itself in the joint.
Right, because that's what the rotator cuff does. It holds
Yeah.
your humeral head in the joint. Like
Yep.
if you've worked with somebody with a stroke on one side, where there's really paralysis on one side, you'll see that it's like the humeral head falls out of the socket
Yep.
because it takes those muscles to hold it in. So if
Yeah.
I'm really training it to, if that's what those muscles are supposed to do, and I'm training them to hold that in, that just creates more stability and more strength of that foundation for pushing or pulling or lifting, whatever you're going to do.
Yeah. So I love that that's where we need to start, is that awareness. Where is the humeral head? What is it doing? How do we create that congruency? So now that we've
Mhm.
done that and we've created that awareness, we want to get some motion. We want to get some movement patterns going. What's your next
Yeah.
step?
Well, so next step. So I like what you said about just having the band and adding that slight resistance and then adding movement from there because you're already starting to move the whole structure a bit,
Yes, you are.
right? But what we haven't talked about yet is how the scapula comes into play on that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because yes, you can move your arms without moving your scapula in certain ranges of motion. But most of us, that's not always what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for
Right.
isolation generally of the glenohumeral joint from the scapula. The scapula. So
Right.
the second piece is what is this? Where is the scapula and what is it's doing?
So
And
awareness of the scapula would be our next,
yes,
focus, is
yeah.
where is the scapula? What is it doing? Is it sitting even there properly?
So sometimes, like this is something you can usually see just in somebody's posture is how do their scapula sit on their rib cage? And what you'll see, you'll often see that it's uneven. The two sides are different because, again, that
Mhm.
dominance on one side or the other makes huge difference in our upper body. So oftentimes you'll see that one is like what they call, there's a term that sometimes is called forward tilt, where the
Mhm.
scapula kind of is coming, it's like it's creeping up and over the rib cage,
Yep.
right? And it's almost like that clavicle is a little more forward, and that whole humerus, the whole scapula is a little more forward. This isn't just the humerus, it's the whole scapula rounding for like rounded shoulders, right? A lot of times I'll see that, and oftentimes on one side. Yep, there we go. Yeah, so Brian is showing this on screen if you want to check out the YouTube channel. Exactly. So it just slides. It's like it really does slide up and over the rib cage forward,
Yep.
and that puts you in that funky kind of rounded over posture. And it may or may not be in the thorax. Like this may go with a kyphosis, but it may just be that those shoulder blades are forward, up and over.
Mhm.
Sometimes, not so commonly, especially these days, I'll have a client who really hyper retracts their scapula, sticks their chest out and brings one scapula closer to the spine than the other one. I'll often have one scapula that sits higher on the rib cage than the other one, or
Yes,
sits
very
more in,
common.
right? Like, and that's almost all of us with just sidedness are higher on one side than the other. That's really normal, and not always dysfunctional either. By the way, just something
Mhm.
to note. And then oftentimes I'll often look and see, are they rotated? Like sometimes that one scapula is really downwardly rotated, that tip is really kind of in and down. The other one is kind of floating a little more to the side. So it's really just like, where is that clock face? I love that analogy of yours. Or I use sometimes an island, that's like attached to a
Mm.
bunch of strings, right? But where is that sitting? And that's just kind of first step. Is just where is it? Where is it living?
Yeah. I find that by using my hand on their scapula, it works really well that they can sort of feel if there's a discrepancy between sides.
Uh-huh. So you'll put your hands, and I find I have to put my hands pretty lightly. I'm not trying to tell them what to
Exactly.
do. I'm trying
No.
to kind of mirror that sensation of, like, it's almost like I'm trying to have the scapula on the outside, my hands be the scapula on the outside of their skin so
Yep.
the skin can feel where the scapula is. If that makes sense.
Bingo.
Pretty light touch. And it's just kind of like, and then they can say, oh, because then they'll
Yep.
feel like, oh, your left hand is higher than your right hand, or it's farther
Yep.
out than, and
Yep.
that's a nice way to do that. Because clients have no idea. I mean, that there is
Precisely.
not a lot of proprioceptive sense at all about where your scapula are for most people.
And what I like to use is I've got large hands. So I like to use the palm of my hand sort of in the center of their scapula so that they're not feeling me grab them like a massage therapist would use their
Yeah.
fingers. It's more
Yes.
that light touch so
It's
they can
flat.
just
It's a
feel
flat touch.
it's a
Yep.
flat surface.
Yep.
So they can feel. And then I'll have them elevate, I'll have them depress, I'll have them protract and retract so they can feel how what's going on with the skin. Because again, that's where
Yes.
we're feeling a lot of our proprioception is more from our skin.
Yep.
So they'll be able to see that, and they'll also be able to feel it's like, are you even? Your hands
Yeah.
don't feel like they're in the same place on both sides. They'll say, aha, they're not.
Right.
That's where your scapula is.
Yep.
And by bringing their awareness, a lot of times what I find is just by doing that, they'll think about it and say, you're right. Because now they're cueing in internally on where that scapula is. So now, even if I remove my hands, they could say, yeah, I can feel that that one's a little higher than the other one. Or I can feel that this one may be a little bit more rotated upward. And a lot of times the dysfunctional one, like you said, is oftentimes going to be upwardly rotated or
Mhm.
more protracted or a combination of the two.
Yep.
And I could say, can you feel how this is sitting a little bit more up or a little bit more out? And they'll say, yeah, I can. I say, okay, now I want you to bring your scapula back and have my hands feel like they're even on your back. So again, giving
Mm.
them that
Yes.
proprioception. So they're able to pull back. And now they're like, oh, and I'll say, okay, now you're closer or you've got it or whatever. But it's bringing that awareness. So I could say, okay, now when we start the exercise, here's where I want you to feel balance between the two. If you can, I'm not like you said, sometimes there's no necessarily pain, dysfunction, whatever you want to call it, when they're not exactly even. But just getting them to feel where it is in space and trying to even it out, even in their minds, can really help with the exercise.
And guys, this is a critical point. Okay. This is something that, again, Brian and I have worked with a lot of injured clients over a lot of years for a lot of situations. And if you can get them to feel what's happening
Yeah.
and get them to figure out how to self-correct, that is the key.
Yep.
And not every client, honestly, not every client is capable of that. I've had many who are
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, they are not going to feel what's happening no matter
It's
what
not
tools I
happening no
give them.
matter
It's
what.
not happening. But basically, like if I really find that when I'm going to make a difference on somebody in terms of a movement pattern or a pain pattern, if I can
Yep.
help, if they can take control of it and they can go, oh, that's where I want to be, and start to find that in their daily life, that's where the magic happens for me. Like I can
Yeah.
train it, I can bring their awareness to it, I can try to create endurance in it, all that. Like that's my job. But if they take that habit home, that's where the change happens. I just wanted to bring that up,
Mhm.
especially in terms of the shoulder girdle. I mean, everything
Yes.
else too, but the shoulder girdle is very true.
Absolutely. And again, we don't know where our bodies are in space a lot of times. You're just going through life in autopilot. And just getting that awareness does make a huge difference. And then
Yeah,
when you add in movement on top of that, it can make a huge difference. And
exactly.
I'll get them to cue in on things. Where do they spend most of their time? Office chair, car
Yeah.
seat.
Yep.
So I'll say, when you're sitting back in the car seat, do your shoulders feel like they're even?
Yep.
Just again, make them aware. They
Exactly.
when you ask the question, it's sort of like you don't notice the pink elephant in the room until someone says, "Hey, you seen that pink elephant?" Then
Right.
that's all you can
Exactly.
see.
Yep.
Well, now if they lean back in their car and they're going to say, "Oh yeah, that doesn't feel even." I've brought their awareness to some place where they are often enough, and I'll say, every stoplight, every time you stop,
Just notice.
try and just notice where it is in space.
Yep.
Just notice. Do they feel even? Don't make huge corrections. Don't have them fixate on it. Just every once in a while. And just by bringing that awareness that every once in a while, things can begin to change slowly over time.
So with that, now do you do that just like seated or standing?
I do both. I'll do both. I'll
Okay.
do seated. I'll do standing. Uh, I like seated because
Uh-huh.
a lot of my clients do sit at office desks
Yeah.
and things like that. Like, I'm sitting in my chair right now. So I'm thinking, oh, where do mine feel fairly even? Because I can feel the bottom tips of my
Yep.
scapula. And I'm
Exactly.
like,
Poking
yeah, I
into the
can feel them
chair.
poking into the chair. Okay. And I
Yep.
feel even. But if I
Yep.
was here, I'd be like, oh, wow, I really don't feel that. So maybe I can correct and hold that for, a brief 5 seconds. Okay. They feel more balanced now. Then go back to work.
Right.
Just
Good. Good.
because we don't spend all of our time standing, or a lot of us don't. If you're a
Yeah.
chef, maybe. If you're, certain jobs, yes. But a lot of our clients, they spend a lot of time at their office, sitting in that chair.
So to make that dynamic, another way that I do that is I do it with a wall plank.
Mhm.
Right, so
Yes.
with the hands up against the wall, and I really have people, especially when I start this, I don't have them leaning back at all. So the feet are really right underneath them. They're just in a
Mhm.
full 90-degree angle from the shoulder to the torso. Like, a lot of people want to bring their feet back and kind of lean into the wall. That brings their arms up a little over 90. So I want to kind of keep them just simple 90. And then
Yep.
from there, we'll do things like retraction and protraction, or I'll start to then add like a push-up. Right, just a
Mhm.
simple wall push up from there, and have them again with my hands gently on their shoulders, feel, are the shoulders moving and how much, and are they moving evenly? So
Yes.
taking it into like again, just making it from kind of awareness to a little bit of a dynamic action there. And just another version of what you're doing is a really simple way. And
Mhm.
and that means I'm standing, I can see them, I've got
Yep.
good access to their scapula. And again, with my hands, flat on my hands, gently on the scapula, I can usually feel it pretty well, what's
Yes.
happening.
Yes. And sometimes that's all you need, is to get them to understand what elevation is, what depression is, what upward rotation is, downward rotation, and just allowing them to feel that. Because, especially with upward and downward rotation, I find is very critical, because
Yes.
flexion and extension, usually not as much.
Yep.
I'm not saying it doesn't move. What I'm saying is there's not as much discrepancy as upward and downward rotation when they lift their arms
Yes.
out to the side and overhead and
Exactly.
back down. And you'll be able to feel one is moving faster than the other, or one is higher than the other. By getting them to be aware of that, when you're asking them to do scaption or a lateral raise, or you're asking them to reach overhead, or you're asking them to do that, they're going to become much more aware of where that scapula is, and is it working properly? Is it where we really want it to be?
So I'm going to take us back a moment from upward rotation, because again, that's kind of one of my last steps. So here, like I've they have a feeling for where their scapula are. They have a feeling for the glenohumeral joint is, right? And they're like working on those two pieces. What I'll often do from that point is start to do some simple pushing and pulling exercises, right? It may be maybe like a lateral raise below 90. It may be just forward flexion below
Yep.
90. It may be like a little chest press. It may be whatever. Lots of options there in terms of movement patterns. It may be symmetrical. It may be asymmetrical. But basically,
Mhm.
then starting to play with just how do they, for example, do a little chest press, right? Let's say on the reformer, for example, in your world, maybe with bands or something. I've got the strap's coming from behind me and I'm reaching forward, right? How do I, again, plug that glenohumeral joint in? And then how much do I let the scapula move in that exercise?
Yep.
Right? Because some clients, it's not going to move much because some clients have just a little different mobility. Other ones, they're going to move into a little bit of upward rotation or maybe even a little bit of protraction as they go. Are the two sides even? Is it working that way? So bringing that awareness into those kind of exercises. Is that glenohumeral joint staying congruent, right? For just a reach forward, just a simple like
Yes.
chest press or reach forward. And then I take that same idea and I take it out into like a horizontal abduction, right? Or even little like arm circles in some direction or other. So playing with just how is the glenohumeral joint moving? How is the scapula moving in below 90 arm movements, of which there are many.
See, what's interesting is something that I was alluding to earlier, having people in supine on the foam roller. These are all the exact things that I will have them do because arm circles.
Yeah.
You know, protraction and retraction first, finding neutral, then circle the arms and start small. Like you're tracing a quarter, then a silver dollar, then a paint can lid, you know, getting them a little bit bigger. And something that someone else, one of my, you know, mentors years ago told me is try and keep it as quiet as possible within the shoulder joint. Because if you're doing a lot of glenohumeral incongruency and it's moving around too much, you're going to hear popping, creaking, all of that. So if it's staying in the well placed, you're not going to have as much. There may be some, depending on their labrum and things like that. There may be some, you know, noise, just crackles. But if you can keep it as quiet as possible when doing those arm circles, and get as big as you can, you know, keep working your way out. Believe it or not, I've had some people that it's like their first time, crackle, crackle, pop, pop, all the time. But after a week or two, suddenly they've got good size arm circles and it's relatively quiet because it's staying in that socket in a nice pattern and those muscles are balancing out, you know, working the way that they should to keep it balanced in the joint. And I'll do horizontal abduction. I'll do all of those things, even arm scissors when one arm comes forward, one arm goes down by my hip. And in that supine position, I find it really does help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, with or without resistance. In your case, using gravity for resistance, I'm assuming. Right. On the reformer, I might use like a blue spring or a red spring, something light. There's some resistance there as we start to work into it. But I love working on the half roller or the roller, getting that idea of where my scapula, because you can kind of feel them on there. One other little thing I was going to add to that concept is just finding that congruency, finding that basically balance between the two, working asymmetrically, finding, let's say, stability on one side versus mobility on the other. So like if I'm on the supine on the roller, especially a half roller, I might have my one hand down on the ground, right? My palm anchoring and then working the other arm to feel the difference in the two in terms of stability versus the movement. The other thing too is for those simple circles, what I find is there are natural, quote unquote, natural rhythms of medial rotation versus lateral rotation in those circles. And a lot of clients don't know that and can't find that. So they'll just stay, let's say they'll stay laterally rotated for the whole circle, or they'll stay medially rotated for the whole circle.
Right.
And oftentimes, like if I just say, hey, just think about that rotation piece and get that as smooth and comfortable as possible. And in both directions, or I'll have them take, okay, laterally rotate and take your circles, medially rotate, take your circles. Now play with where that balance point is through that whole circle that is most comfortable for you.
Nice. Playing with that whole idea of one doing, you know, more motion and the other being more stable. I like using the band for that because I can keep one arm still. And go into horizontal abduction, or I can pull it down by my side. I can move my other arm in various directions where that scapula is going to move. The glenohumeral joint is going to move, but the other side is really requiring it to stay still. and holding where it should be, not squeezing back and not, holding it rigid, but allowing it. And I use that word a lot. Allow that shoulder to stay in place.
Yeah.
Because when you say, keep it there, a lot of people hunker down. If you say,
Right.
allow it to stay in place while the other arm moves,
Mm-hmm.
it's a gentler word. And sometimes that cues them into, oh, okay, they'll just keep it there. So what I'm doing, I'm just sort of demonstrate, take one arm out to the side, little horizontal abduction. My other arm is just allowing that motion to stay still. And again,
Right. The other arm's in flexion, guys, just so you know.
yeah, inflection
Holding the
straight in
band in
front of me.
flexion, other arm is reaching out. Yeah.
Yeah. So both arms start in front of the body. I always say reaching up to the sky, or like a zombie from the 1950s movies. So taking the arm out to the side and allowing that arm to stay still, and then maybe taking it a little higher or a little lower, changing a little bit of path of motion, alternating sides, doing all of that. It just gets that shoulder to feel what it's like to hold it in place. I'll do that with almost all the exercises eventually. Internal and external rotation, any of the band type of exercises, because one side can remain in neutral while the other side is working for internal or external rotation or horizontal abduction or flexion or whatever I want it to do.
Nice.
So just some thoughts.
Nice. Nice. So one of the things about that is very commonly our shoulders are used that way. We're stabilizing with one arm and we're working the other arm. I'm thinking of my husband has a wood shop and does a lot of things in the wood shop. And I'm thinking about, like, every now and then I'll go out and I'll do sanding. So I'm stabilizing one shoulder with, my hands on the table or my forearms on the table or whatever, and I'm moving the other arm. Right. Or if you're cooking, sometimes, you've got one hand here and you're chopping with the other hand, or you're stabilizing something. So it's just one of those things to think about, that's a very, very common movement pattern that we use all the time. And generally we'll be stabilizing more with our non-dominant arm and working more with our dominant arm. Right. So that also creates like a mobility component on one side and a stability component on the other. So playing with that, reversing that, those are really nice ways just to think about, what are they trying to do and how we're trying to get that balance.
It's funny you should mention that, because yesterday I was doing just that. I was on my hands and knees, and anybody who's ever had painting done, after the nice flooring goes in, there's always a few spots. And I was literally down on my hands and knees and my one hand, and I reversed it. I do this all the time. I try and use my non-dominant hand to do
me too.
skills like
Things
that.
like
Just
that.
so I was basically holding my body weight up with my right hand, and my left hand doing these little scrubbing motions, little scrubbing motions, spray, scrub, trying to get these little paint dots that only I see. No one else could ever see them but me, but I have to, I get fixated on them every time I walk into the room. But I was doing that and I didn't even think about that, but really, you're right. I was stabilizing with one arm while mobilizing and utilizing, strengthening the other. So it's interesting. Very much so. And that is very common and we do that all the time.
All the time. In so many ways. I mean, even just like in my computer, I almost stabilize with my mouse arm.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like in my case, my wrist is on my thing, my hand's on my mouse, and my other hand is a little bit more free. Like it doesn't really stabilize in the same way, or vice versa. So there's all of those moments or even driving. Like this is weird, but I find when I'm driving, if I both hands on the steering wheel, it's like I'm pulling down with my left arm and up with my right arm. That's just how my particular body, so I'm stabilizing my left, and my right is kind of where I've got more movement, more freedom. And I feel that every time I'm in there, it's like, okay, bring that right shoulder down, just try to balance that out. So those patterns are just common, and it's just a fun thing to play with.
Yeah. Interesting. So now we talked about stability of the scapula and proper. Let's instead of using the word stability, let's talk about control, because really we're trying to talk about dynamic control of the scapula.
Yep.
Now, putting it all together, we want to create movement and proper movement patterns of the anterior and posterior shoulder girdle. So we can do things like pushing and pulling and lifting and reaching and all of the things that we do on a regular basis. And now we want to sort of do them properly and provide some resistance against resistance.
Right. So this is developing, right? This is two pieces here. One piece is just increasing resistance, increasing range of motion, increasing all those things. And the second piece is, from my perspective, is finding the proper movement of the scapula to facilitate those bigger, stronger movements. So I think those are two
Mm-hmm.
little pieces. Adding load to these things, right? Adding load to a chest press, right? For example, what's happening there? Like, is the scapula staying in place? What happens when I add more load to that? What else is being used? Are my scapula moving at the same pace in terms of slight, maybe they're doing a slight protraction there. Are they moving at the same speed? All those pieces. I think adding load slowly and then building up endurance is just critical for all of our upper body work. And,
And
yeah, go
I
on.
love how you just said that, starting slowly. And the reason is how many of us have worked with someone on their core in a supine position? You get them to stand and nothing works. They can't figure
Yep.
it out because now gravity's pulling them differently. And they're like, well, what happened? And then what happens? They brace, they hold everything in place. Well, the
Mhm.
same thing happens when you try and lift too much weight too soon. You're trying to, it's like everything just suddenly hunkers down and tries to pull with everything. And you're no longer focusing on proper movement patterns. You're no longer focusing on what should be done right. You're just yanking. And I see that all the time with clients, and they all want to lift more weight than really what they should be starting with. So starting slowly, making sure they're doing it properly, and working your way forward with that is huge. And I love the fact that you've said working on endurance. Have them do plenty of repetitions, 20, 30, 40 repetitions. Really groove in the proper movement
Yes.
before you add the significant amount of resistance.
And if any of you have any time in the last, the recent past, and I know Brian has been doing this because he's been moving, lifted something a little beyond your ability, or
Oh
push
yeah.
something or move something, right? You're just like, okay, I'm gonna lift this giant thing up, and I know it's a little beyond what I usually stand. And what happens? Every single part of your body goes, I can do this. But the most common thing is you're going to go to your go-to pattern. You are not going
Yep.
to go to the pattern you just trained. You're going to go to like, huh, right, lifting everything up, right shoulder's higher, left shoulder's lower, core's
Yep.
engaged, weight shifted over to the left, like whatever the pattern is, that's like, okay, I got to get this job done. I will do whatever it takes to get this job done.
Yep.
That does not, and especially with the upper body, you're right, that does not encourage proper mechanics.
Nope.
Right? I can do this. Yeah, I can lift this giant thing over my head, but my right shoulder's up, my left shoulder's down, my back is swayed. Like, this is not good.
Yep.
So yeah, so finding the pattern and really work into it. Really find that pattern, work it, work it, work it, work it, and then slowly increase that resistance as they're able to comfortably, and I'm going to say comfortably in a real way, like they can manage this, no problem. I managed, got it. Great. Now we're going to add load, and still, okay, I got it. It's a little bit at the edge, but I got it. Now I'm going to add a little more load. Still at the edge, but I got it. Okay, push too far. I don't get it. That's the place you back off and you start one step down until they're very comfortable. And I do mean that, like,
Yep.
I can do this. I can do 20. I'm clear. Everything feels good. Then I go to the next resistance, step
Mm-hmm.
by step.
Yeah. And again, this is really when you're trying to reestablish good movement
Yes.
patterns,
Yes.
because some people already have good movement patterns and they can be loaded with no
Yeah.
problem. They
Yeah.
can row, they can pull, they can push, and they're fine. But if you're really trying to establish a new pattern, you really want to take your time, because like any habit, they say, how many repetitions does it take in order to accomplish a new habit? Well, it takes a lot when we're really trying to reestablish a new movement pattern to make it second nature,
Yeah.
and not for them to go back into their old pattern where they're just yanking, where they're just pulling, where they're not using their posterior shoulder girdle, they're using their bicep and overworking their bicep every time they go to do a pull, for instance.
So with that in mind, I want to bring us back a little bit because you're talking about anterior posterior balance. And one of this is like this may be stupid simple, but I'm going to mention it anyway. One of the things that I find with many of my clients is that posterior part of the chain, so back of the rotator cuff, rhomboids,
Yep.
etc., is weaker than the front.
No
Now,
kidding.
how do we spend our
Big
life,
time.
right? We spend our life with our hands in front of us doing stuff. So
Mhm.
for the most part, we're not doing stuff where we're pulling our arms back behind us. And so, for me, just very simply, I always start with some back exercises, whether it's rows, whether it's from, balance Pilates work, chest expansion. I always start with something to get that upper back woken up.
Yep.
Because especially if a client has been sitting at a desk all day, I can almost guarantee you those muscles are asleep. And if I give
Mhm.
them, let's say, a bicep curl, the arms are going to pull in, the elbows are going to be in front of them, the scapula are going to protract, and they're going to bicep curl.
Yep.
And that's not what I'm looking for, right?
Yep.
So really get
Big
that
time.
posterior woken up. And sometimes I'll just have clients work on the back for, honestly, I've had clients work on the back for a couple of weeks or even almost a couple of months for a couple of clients before I really would start to do things like a chest press, like something really
Yep.
forward because their back was so asleep.
That's exactly where I start. I start almost everybody with the posterior shoulder girdle first. So bands or against gravity, W's, T's, retraction, all of those things, rows, way before I'll ever have them do something pushing,
Right.
because they need to not only wake that up, but get it stronger. Because
Yeah.
as I tell people, especially if they need postural exercises, well, the last thing I need to do is tighten up your chest anymore or tighten up your anterior shoulder girdle.
Exactly. Exactly.
We got to shore that area up, and it needs to be done with endurance. So it needs a lot of repetitions
Yep.
or a lot of isometrics. So sometimes I'll
Yep.
have them hold the end range of motion for 5 seconds on certain exercises just to wake that area up, create some endurance. But we do a lot more repetitions, and I look at ratios. So I'll
Mm.
train those posterior muscles on a 3-to-1 ratio sometimes to the
Mhm.
anterior. So I'll choose 3 back exercises. I'm just using the term back, but posterior.
Yep.
I'll do W's, I'll do T's, and I'll do rows, and I'll do 1 anterior shoulder, like a press, because
Nice.
we still need to
That's about
do
what I
that.
do too. Yep. Yep.
But that 3-to-1 ratio really helps to balance that out, I find, and
Like it.
set them on the right path.
So from a Pilates lens, just to put this in perspective, so chest expansion, right? That's a posterior shoulder exercise. Um, prone on the long box, pulling straps. Those are some posterior shoulder exercises, and again, you can play with some of those. Although I'm also really a fan of what Brian talked about with W's and T's. So this might be a prone exercise, or I might be
Mhm.
standing, but a lot of times I'll be prone, let's say on a small ball, or the roller, or something like that, and just taking my arms into W and just lifting them up behind me. Just really just squeezing my scapula together, right? Just
Yep.
retracting the scapula in different angles. And so those are some things that I work on a lot. I love the 3-to-1. I'm good because I kind of realize I use that a lot, not with consciously, because I'll do like at least about 3 or 4 things working on the back, and then I'll do again maybe just a chest press or huggetry or something on the front. Um, One other thing to think about with all of those, and I love to play with this, is 2 things. One is how much am I moving my scapula? How much I'm moving my
Mhm.
glenohumeral joint? So I'm going to think about just like a row. Okay. So row just means I'm pulling my elbows back behind me. Do I just do that from my glenohumeral joint? Do I keep my
Mm.
scapula stable? That's going to work differently than if I
Yes.
focus on it moving from the scapula.
Yep.
And I will play with both. And oftentimes I'll find people are stronger one way than the other. And of course, being a movement teacher, I will have them do what's harder more because that's what we do. So adding and playing with that. And the other thing too, I'll play with, let's say on a chest expansion, right? Just pulling the arms back, is play with different angles of the humerus.
Mm.
So,
Yes.
in lateral rotation and medial rotation, like playing with different angles, because those will also get different parts of that shoulder working and can often help me identify what isn't working in terms of that clock face that Brian was talking about. Like, okay, they're really good here and here, but they're not good, let's say in that 6, 7, 8 o'clock range, something like that.
Yep. 2 things that we also tend to forget about. So I want to mention them here before we run out of time. One is working our serratus, because I
Yeah.
find that that is very important. Yes, it's involved in protraction, and we end up being in protraction a lot, but that doesn't mean it's strong.
No.
No, so that's something to think about, is a serratus. Also, depression,
Mhm.
getting our shoulder blades to push downward. we take these two things for granted a lot because I find we're already round shouldered. A lot of people are. So they think, oh, that serratus is already, it's shortened, it's strong. And we take gravity for granted that our scapula should be pulled down just because of gravity. But oftentimes it's not. Oftentimes it's elevated on a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I find that those are two muscle groups that we really need to focus on working. And for the serratus, the one that I love is just putting them against a wall in a wall push-up. Now, I prefer starting them in more of a bent elbow plank position so that their forearms are resting on the wall. That way they don't get their triceps and elbows involved as much. Let their chest float to the wall and then push away.
Yeah.
Just push.
Sternum drops from Pilates land. Yeah.
Yes. Sternum drops. I just some people call them push-up plus. I mean, they go by a lot of names. If you've been in fitness for a while, you know, every exercise has like 30 names.
Yes.
So, you know, I call it protraction because that's really what it is. So I'm focusing on that protraction, but I want to start out lightly so I can do a lot of repetitions. Then I'll put them on a high table. You know, I have a high-low table that goes up and down. I'll put them on something like that, or use the Cadillac so that their forearms are on that. And what you're going to find is how quickly they fatigue. You know, even my big, strong guys, they'll do the first set and maybe they'll do 15 and they're struggling by number 12. The second set, they get 7 or 8. And you can see those muscles are shot. They lack endurance.
Yes, absolutely. Because they're not used dynamically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the serratus is something that I find a lot of people don't focus on, you know, nearly as much.
And one of the ways that I do that in Pilates is with the straps from the back, so facing the foot bar and the reformer, taking huggetry from my scapula. So
Nice.
I'm not really moving my glenohumeral joint much. I'm bringing my scapula together, and then with that slight resistance, I'm bringing my scapula forward, like that huggetry rounding and back. And I don't know, some PT I was working with a long time ago said that's one of the best ways to get that serratus to work, is to actually have that kind of resistance from the back. Like even doing a chest press where I'm really, again, with a light enough resistance. So it's just taking you know, a development on what you're doing by putting straps back there or whatever and pushing into that chest press, but having the scapula squeeze together at the back and push, be part of that push up going forward. That's another way that I'll get the serratus kind of woken up. Now, I don't always want to train that in a push up, right? To be clear, like with a push up, I'm not training complete scapular immobility either in a push-up, but I do want just to have that scapula have to move just as much as it needs to for that client into a little bit of retraction as they go down and then back to neutral as they come up into slight protraction. That's going to vary wildly in every person to get that rhythm right.
The other thing I was mentioning is depression. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. And it all depends on your goal. One of the simplest ways I find is using an office chair. And I can demonstrate this since I happen to be sitting in one right now. I use the arms of my office chair and I straighten my arms all the way out. And I let my butt get heavy and my shoulders float towards my ears. And then with my arms, I just push down as my body pops up. It's a simple way to begin to train those muscles. And in a traditional exercise like a dip, I used to call them depression dips because really elbows were straight. And I was just working on those depression muscles of the scapula, you know, the lower trapezius, especially, and even the latissimus dorsi, pushing down and getting those to fire. It really does work. And again, it's a simple exercise and you can have clients do it at home, you know, or at the office, especially those whose shoulders are always in their ears and need to be trained to pull out of it. It's an easy way to get that scapula to want to pull down.
Variations on that in Pilates is standing facing away from the foot bar with the hands on the foot bar. I mean, there's also ways to do this with like thigh stretch or not thigh stretch, but tendon stretch and things like that. But just very simply there, I'll just have my feet on the floor with my knees bent and my butt off the bar. Right? Because then a lot of my body weight is supported there. My feet are supporting. And then I just dip down. My hips go below the bar. And then I just push and my hip goes above the bar. Same thing, just a light, like just down and up. That shrug and down with resistance. Really great. Really great. And again, you'll find people get very fatigued very fast on that one because it's not an area that we train.
Yep. Another way to do that is on a pull down type of exercise where you can take a
Yeah.
band or something from a high position where your arms are overhead and you're just initiating with that scapular retraction and depression, just pulling that down and then letting them float up, pulling them down, letting them float up. Another way to do it, they both work. And again, it's just training those areas of that sort of clock face that we don't train on a regular basis. We have a tendency to work, the ones that elevate much more than the ones that depress. So just thinking about that when we're talking about balancing out those movements.
Nice. Nice.
So we
I
covered a
think that
lot.
we did cover a lot, as we often do. Hopefully this is helpful to you guys. So just to reiterate, to kind of wrap up, where we talked about just glenohumeral congruency and helping clients feel that
Yep.
and find that, and lots of different ways to play with that, which was great, right? Using bands, using their own hand, then looking at moving, right? Gently moving and keeping that congruency. So for example, with our little push-ups on the wall or a simple chest press. Then looking at the scapula and where is the scapula? How is it living? How is it sitting? A lot of tips and tricks to find where that is for a client, help them to feel it with feedback against the wall, against their office chair, with your hands, all those different options. And then thinking about training those two ideas, that congruency and that dynamic scapular control, when they're adding load to it, right? So again, maintaining the good movement pattern with as light a load as is necessary to maintain that good movement pattern. And then
Yes.
slowly building that up. If you've got somebody with a neck issue or a shoulder issue, trust me, that's what they need to do
Yeah.
because their old pattern was not working for them, right?
Mhm.
Or if they're post-surgery, they don't know what their new pattern is. So all those are circumstances. And then looking at bigger ranges of motion, adding more load, looking at the scapular mobility and how that works. And then to finish up, you're thinking about the back of the body, thinking about the serratus, thinking about the scapular depressors, and getting all those often neglected areas to come up and fire for us.
Yep.
Was that a summary, Brian?
I think that was a good summary. I think you covered just about everything. I think you covered just about everything there. No, this is, like I say, we wanted to cover strategy today. We gave you a lot of practical advice. So don't get me wrong. We covered a lot of practical, but we also gave you those strategies of what you can do when the client comes to you and you see that something's not working right, something's out of place. There's a movement pattern that's, I'm not going to use the word wrong, but dysfunctional and maybe leading to some pain patterns. What are our thought processes? What do we think about? And what are our strategies, and trying to help impart them on you so that they may help you with that next client who comes to you and is like, oh, okay, yeah, I could definitely see that. And maybe putting your hands on their scapula. Oh, wow, that actually worked. And maybe that'll shorten, the amount of time that it takes for you to get them into a good range of motion. So hopefully you can utilize some of these strategies and they can help you with your practice on your clients.
All right.
All
So,
right.
yes. Are we wrapping up?
I think we're wrapping up.
We're wrapping up. Excellent.
All right. So thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. Again, hit the like and follow buttons. As always, you can reach us at movingconvos@gmail.com. Anytime you have a question, comment, or a topic you want us to cover, please reach out. Let us know. We'd be more than happy to cover it. Be on the lookout. We do have some guests scheduled for the future, so be on the lookout. Those seem to be our very popular episodes. We love bringing people on. So they will be, coming up. We're hoping to do at least one a month, if not more often. So be on the lookout. And for Nora St. John, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.